BT15 might arguably be one of the worst sets yet. Yes, I said it, to be ever made in the Digimon trading card game. Today's video looks at pull ratios of this set, and after opening 2 cases just based on my pulls and data, I can support my claim. While many players in this card game would argue that BT11 was the worst set, the inclusion of LM1 cards for this set make it far worse. Keep in mind, for every set, I record my pulls and from this can analyze the ratios and expected values. So with that, let's look at some metrics for comparison. For my first comparison, I'm going to pull data from 2 cases of BT14. Here, this set had 12 super rares, 2 secret rares, and 20 alternate art cards to go through. Notice that after 24 boxes of BT14, I had almost 2 playsets of every card, secret rares included. While true Angemon was only at 7 copies, at the time of crafting decks, most decks only ran 2 to 3. But of course, as times change, this might call for more. But notice that out of all of my super rares, I had at least 2 playsets. And luckily with Metal Greymon Ace, I only opened 9, which meant that I had more copies of other super rares that would be used. If you look at things from a playset collector perspective, with Agumons, I had 16 copies total. This meant that I had 4 copies that could immediately go into a collection binder, 4 to go into a War Greymon deck, and then 8 additional copies to go immediately towards cores or locals who needed them. While true, I didn't get 12 of every super rare, having at least 8 meant that I could feasibly have 4 put away in a binder, and 4 for my decks. For a secondary visual comparison, Special Booster 1.5 was a combined set of BT1, BT2, and BT3 cut in half. Oddly enough, this set only had 10 unique super rares, whereas Special Booster 1.0, according to my old data, had 20. While true, this would mark 1.0 as the worst set, this set was also heavily modified, with the alt art tamers being box toppers and an extra dash pack that contained alt arts for several of the other Digimon. This trimmed a lot of the alt art pulls as box toppers, making it effectively easier to pull everything possible, alt art wise. The hilarious part is that even with just 13 boxes of Special Booster 1.5, close to half of what I opened for BT15, I got close to 2 playsets for my super rares, with my secrets being the only problem child. If I were to roughly double my numbers for Special Booster 1.5, you again can see that I have roughly 4 playsets worth of super rares to work with, into cores and for other players. And for the third comparison, let's look at BT11, the set where a lot of players argue is the worst set for Digimon. Even with 2 cases of BT11, I was able to get close to 3 playsets worth from just 2 cases. And while yes, there were campaign rares thrown in as well, the only thing that really affected was the secret rares. But now let's look at BT15's pull ratios. While BT14 had 12 base rarity super rares, this set had 16 super rares with the inclusion of 4 additional cards from LM1, and 1 additional secret rare in the form of Quantumon, driving this number up to 3. With BT15, this is where the numbers game changes completely. After recording all of my numbers, there was definitely a skew towards certain cards over others. And to make it worse, this was the first time for me in a while where after 2 cases, I didn't have 3 playsets of everything. Heck, I didn't even have 2. Mega Kabuterimon Ace and Leviamon X were 2 super rares that I only pulled 7 of total. Nowhere near enough for a playset for collection, and 1 to play with at the same time. While the LM cards were nice to bring over to Western audiences, I am still of the opinion that these cards are a little late. But with the restrictions for several cards going into effect on March 1st, who knows? They might be more playable. But for me, I would have rather gotten more Mega Kabuterimon Aces to build Insectoid cores for newer players to get into the game. From initially skimming TCG Player at the end of this weekend, I was able to roughly ascertain values for all of BT15. But remember, we are still in the pre-release phase, and this is ultimately where values are at their highest. While true, out of my 24 boxes I only showed a loss in 3 boxes, keep in mind that it's just for now. Even with BT14, I recorded the numbers for what prices were looking like pre-release weekend. My average box value was then close to $24 a box in profit, with the inclusion of every box topper and promo. But with revised values over time, my average dropped significantly to $18 for an average plus, meaning now a box generated about 25% less value. If you were to apply the same 20 to 25% loss in value over time for BT15 on a box by box basis, this means if you were to repeat the expense of purchasing boxes at $75 a piece, you would be looking at an average loss of $6 a box. But again, with the restriction list, we have no idea whether a new deck will suddenly cause a spike in value of all cards, meaning this point here may not be a problem. Overall, my personal experience with BT15 leans more negatively, for the fact that this is one of the first sets I don't have extras to really build for newer players. Locally, we have quite a number of players wanting to get into the game, and trying to make that experience positive for them is important. To that end though, BT14 is one of the best sets for Bandai to ever print for two main reasons. Number 1. While limited in supply, demo decks were a huge help in that it released Ukomon, one of the best rookies to ever make it into the game. While there are two higher rarities, being given already a value of $10 with a demo deck is really nice. Number 2. The guarantee of one of each copy of training option cards. With these cards being staples for most decks and even valued at on average $5 a piece, that's an instant $30 value for the box as well. BT15 offers none of these items. There's no promos like EX5 in which you can pull any value in the form of Raremon, Saberdramon, Zubamon, and more. The biggest fault here is that with Apocalomon's restrictions, there is a significant decrease in hype for wanting to buy boxes because while true, a secret rare is not guaranteed, pulling this or the alternative art version feels cheapened. For instance, look at EX5's Anubismon. While we can all agree that this card was overtuned to all hell, this card held a value of $35 from its release to January 12th. But with its restriction status after this time period, the few players who wanted to max rarity it were ready for Bandai Card Games Fest, and after that, the demand was non-existent. The card now sits at $7, but if it were still at $4, I suspect it would still be easily $30 or $40. By restricting a secret rare so early in North America's meta, you effectively kill any chances this product sells. This goes back to one of my earlier episodes in that who does this affect most? Players, stores, or both? Remember, stores have to pre-order products months in advance. They have no way of knowing what will affect their ability to sell the product. So when Bandai comes out with restrictions for cards, this can also affect product being released. For Japanese players, I can recall pictures of people posting lines waiting for the newest set and all the hype surrounding Apocalymon. But here, we get it for 2 weeks before all of that changes. That being said, there are a few important things to consider. Number 1, personally if I opened boxes and found the pull ratios to be subpar, I would likely forego buying any more boxes and simply buy singles. Number 2, however, I'm likely not the only one who would be upset with the pull ratios and others would likely do the same thing. Meaning for the world of singles, there would be a much higher demand. Number 3. One problem though. If you're not opening boxes and selling singles and a lot of your locals aren't opening boxes and selling singles, very likely the singles market will have extremely limited stock but a high demand. Which means higher priced singles. Which leads to number 4. Higher priced singles will mean that there will be a demand for someone to bite the bullet and open boxes. And since there will be a demand of that, boxes will likely go up in price. Which means once the stock has reached its equilibrium, boxes won't be opened again and they'll start dropping in price again, waiting for the next big card to make an impact and force another wave of opening. Which takes me to the final point of this video. Should you buy at the pre-release prices? For me personally, there is no definitive answer. With BT15 largely solved for the first 2 weeks, everything after March is unknown. Meaning until an event happens without Apocalymon, Anubismon, and Melga leading the charge, we have no idea what will be the next best deck in the format, which ultimately makes it a gamble. After seeing some of the numbers I posted on this video, what are your thoughts on BT15 as a set? What did you like? Dislike? Do you agree with my assessment in the ratios, and if you don't, why? While you may hear people saying that the special rares are 1 per case, anecdotally, I could have just gotten very unlucky. But then my questions are, have they opened 5 cases and gotten 5 chases? Or are they simply saying that because they opened 1? True, 2 cases isn't a lot of data either. But hearing from 3 other people who opened multiple cases currently puts it in a different trend than what people are saying. Let me know your thoughts, and as always, thank you very much for your support. This is DIGI-PANDA, logging out.